Hey, good morning, Facebook family. Jason Teeters here with another episode of Wednesday Wins. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share some of the content today, and I look forward to getting started. I feel like there's a little shadow here. So, what up, Rob? How you doing? Let me move this out of the way so you guys can get a beautiful view of this lovely face of mine. So happy Wednesday. Today, our topic, and my boy Rob's here with the 239. Man, I love what you're doing. I think you're a prime example of some of the conversations we're going to have today on this Wednesday Wins. And today's topic is about how to stop procrastinating and start doing. And I think this is a very important topic for anybody that's out there that's trying to move forward in their life, that's trying to create a life that works for them, is to say, how do I move forward? How do I stop just sitting still and sitting on the sidelines and start creating a life for myself? And so that's what we're going to discuss today in this brief episode of Wednesday Wins. So let's dive in. Whenever we talk about procrastination and moving forward in our life, always look at it from two different points of view, right? One is the individual that analysis by paralysis, right? I have so many options, so many things that are possible for me to do in my life, and I just can't pick one, right? And so we end up doing nothing, right? Well, I could start this business, I could start running, or I could start exercising. And so we have these options, and none of them are really laid out really simple for us. So we just do nothing. And then we sort of get in this recurring cycle about every 2, 3, 4 months where we're just sort of like, oh, I really want to do this. But I start thinking about all the things that I need to do to move forward. And this is a tough place to be for a lot of people. I know for the longest time before I started on this path, that's where I was, right? In the back of my mind, I knew that there was things that I wanted to do. There's things I wanted to accomplish. But how do you attack them all at once, right? A prime example is so many of us put health, right? And I like using this example. So many people of us put health at the main critical point of our life. So we say, oh man, once I get in shape, then I'll be able to wear the clothes I want to wear, and then I'll feel better about myself, and then I'll apply for that position, or then I'll go be in front of Facebook Live more, I'll do more things to put myself out there. And that never happens, right? Because as soon as we don't get in shape, or as soon as we miss that one point that we're trying to make, then it's a domino effect, and everything else goes from there. Good morning, Shauna. Glad you could join. And so in that procrastination part, one of the biggest challenges with that is we've put all of our weight on this one thing, and since we didn't accomplish it, then that means we're not going to be able to accomplish all the other things that we're trying to. So we just stop and we do nothing. And it looks like I got my lawn guys here today. Hopefully it'll go past fairly quick. So that's one end of the spectrum. So this is called, what the? I think they're just doing laps. That could be it. All right, so that's one end of the spectrum, right? The procrastination, the analysis by paralysis. I put all my weight on one actual topic or action item, and I don't complete it, so I don't move forward, right? Now, the other end, right? The other end of the spectrum is where I was at for the longest time, and this is where I have too much knowledge, right? So these are the individuals that love to learn, right? I read book after book, and I learned about cultures, and I learned about business. And then once I got my master's, I learned even more about all these different things that it takes to run a successful business, company, and life. But then I do nothing with that, right? And so a prime example, something I heard, there's these books out there. So a good example was, I just brought some books out. So these are some of the books that I've read before. Persuasion, Start With Why by Simon Sinek, a good one, The Power of Will, and then The 5 Love Languages, right? And one of the things that I heard was, when people put out these books, their goal is for you to learn this information and move forward. But we know from just looking at the way society goes. I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've read The Power of Will. I've read Think and Grow Rich, The Power of Habit. All these books, and their goal is to help us move forward. But if we don't implement any of the things we learn, then it doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter if I'm a bookworm and I've read all these great topics and I can philosophize and theoretically talk about all these things that's going to help me move forward if I don't apply action. And so the goal of this topic today, of the Stop Procrastinating and Start Doing, is to take these two different diagrams, like the individual over here, this analysis by paralysis. I don't know where to start, and I'm hoping somebody recognizes the value in me, because if they don't, then I'm just going to stay in this position. Or the individual that says, I've been reading my whole life, I know so much information, I could talk to you about pretty much everything, but I'm still not applying it in my own life. And so my goal today is to get you right here in the middle, right? How do you move forward? How do you start doing, right? How do you take your life and business to the next level? How do you eliminate the mental and physical clutter that stops you from moving forward? And it's really simple. You start. Your first step is you become aware of your situation. It's that simple. And what do I mean by that? Become aware of your situation. You have to recognize where you're at in your life. So many of us have a fear of doing this sort of deep analysis of what's going on in our current circumstances. But I'm here to tell you that if you don't know what's going on in your current circumstances, if you can't answer some basic questions, then you're going to consistently be overworked, overwhelmed, and stressed anytime you think about moving forward. I'll give you a prime example. I think this happens, I know this happens with my wife and I, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of you. How many times have you come home in the evening and know that you're starving, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I need to eat something. And you open up the pantry, there's nothing in there, and you don't feel like cooking. And then we get in this long debate with ourselves a lot of times where it's like, what do I want? Right? And we start going down the list. Do I want this? Do I want that? I don't know what I want. And next thing you know, it's an hour and a half later, and you still have not moved forward with figuring out what you're going to eat for dinner or ordering. And so becoming aware of your situation, all of a sudden you start to ask the questions, and I think a lot of us go through that. What sounds good? Who delivers? Are we going out to pick it up? Who's going to go pick it up? What's in close proximity? What's open? Right? As you're going through these questions, you're actively moving forward in the process. Right? And as you start to understand, like, how hungry am I? What do I want to eat? What sounds good? Who delivers? You start to go through this where you start ticking things off the box, and the next thing you know, you order your food and it's delivered. And so that's the same thing you have to do, and it's that simple. The same thing you have to do in your life. So, for example, I don't talk about this enough, but in a 1-year period, I got 100% out of debt. I paid off my car, got my credit score from a high 6 to now a high 7. Right? And all this stuff started because I made a decision to move forward, and I became aware of my situation. So what was the first thing I did? I figured out exactly what was working in my life. I figured out what wasn't working. I started taking an assessment of where my money was going, where my time was going, where I wanted it to go, right? What resources I had, what resources I didn't have. And in this assessment and becoming aware of what was going on in my life, it allowed me to make quicker decisions to move forward. right? As soon as I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm spending $3,000 a year in caffeinated drinks at Starbucks, right? As soon as you put a number on that, how easy is it for you to say, okay, well, I'm going to go one time a day. I'm going to go one time a week, so to speak, or maybe 3 times a month. And just by doing those little things, I started to see this gap close, right? Same with my debt, same with my credit cards. I started recognizing that more people were paying less for their insurance. You know what I did? I researched online. How do you call an insurance company to get your payments reduced? Printed out everything. I called them up, and guess what? I got my car insurance reduced. I got my Comcast, my cable reduced. All from these little moments of moving forward. But the point I'm telling you this is that if you're somewhere in your life where you want to move forward, if there's something you really want, right? You don't need to research beyond a reasonable doubt to realize that there's all these different actions, but I don't choose any. Or sit on the sideline and say, well, there's all these things I want to do, but I don't know where to start. You start by becoming aware of your situation. You start by becoming aware of what is going on in your life, what is working, what is not working, what resources you have. And little by little, as you start to discover all these things, it puts you in a prime position to move forward. It puts you in a prime position to create a life that works for you. And so I've seen this a lot with a lot of my clients where they'll say, I need more income in my business. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I want to make an extra, $50,000 next year. Okay, well, what do you make now? Well, this is what I make. Okay, how much do you make a month? Oh, I don't know. And as we start to go through that process and they start to break down how much they make a week, how much they make a month, how much they make in their business, what products they have available, what ways they can advertise, what ways they can put their information out there, then those steps to move forward become extremely simple. And it's the same in your health, your wealth, and your relationships. You want a better relationship? Figure out what's not working. Become aware of what makes your wife frustrated or your partner frustrated. Become aware of what makes them happy. And then day by day, take little steps, consistent steps to move forward. And so my goal today in this Wednesday Wins was to give everybody just a starting point to say, how can I stop procrastinating and start doing? How can I eliminate the mental and physical clutter that's stopping me from moving forward and create a life or a business that works for me? And it starts by becoming aware. Becoming aware. A lot of us have heard the term self-awareness, right? Making sure we have a complete understanding of who we are and what we want. And I think that's a combination of both. Last week I talked about self-confidence. All these things sort of roll into this bigger picture, but nothing really happens until you become aware of what is going on in your life. And as honest as I could be, it's tough. Right? Because when I knew that I wanted to create a life that worked for me, the first thing I had to touch was my financials. And that's a scary place because we've spent the last 20, 30 years as a young child believing that here's my credit card, I'll put this on credit, and I'm eventually going to get rich, so I'll just put this out here and eventually it'll come back to me. And I had to wrestle with the whys. Like, why did I get myself in debt? Why did I overextend my credit? Why did I put so much pressure on myself to try to have this life that I wasn't ready for? And so I had to get back to the basics. I had to get back to understanding what a budget was, what my debt was, and how that affects my happiness, right? When you're stressed because you're unaware of what's going on in your life, that leads to anxiety, that leads to stress, that leads to being overwhelmed, that leads to frustration, and then that outward is anger, right? We see it played out in road rage or yelling at our child or being upset at our partner or, everybody's an idiot but me, and those are the things that happen when you don't evaluate your current situation. And so for anybody out there that wants to grow their income, that wants to spend more time with their family, that wants to create a business that works for them, or just wants to be happier, right? Don't overwhelm yourself with all these different things that you need to do. Just do one thing and start by becoming aware of what you want, becoming aware of what you have available, becoming aware of what resources, what friends, what information can help you move forward. And once you become aware, take the first step. Pick one of those things and just move forward. And so today in this Wednesday Wins, as you're sitting there watching me, I want you to recognize that it's and I always talk about this. It's not easy. This isn't for everybody. You're not going to sit here and be like, all right, I got it. I'm going to do it and I'm going to rock the world. It is going to be consistent effort, time in and time out. You got to do it over and over and over again. But what I will tell you that we're not trying to run a sprint. I'm not trying to be happy and wealthy for 2018 and not care about 2019. I'm trying to be happy and wealthy the rest of my life. We only have one of them. And so if that means that I got to do some serious self-reflection and understand where I want to go and become extremely aware of what's going on, then I'm going to do it. And that happens consistency. It's not a one-time thing. I do it probably every 3 or 4 months. In my head, I probably do it every day, right? Trying to measure myself and figure out what is going on, what is happening, what works, what doesn't work. But I promise you, once you do it once, it gets easier, right? Your confidence builds up. It becomes simpler to realize what works and what doesn't work, and then you adapt. And then you change, and then you move forward, and then you try it again. I mean, that's what life is all about, everybody. It's about creating something special and not like other people, right? There's a million different ways that I could do this Facebook Live. There's a million different ways that I could start a lifestyle design company, but I got to find what works for me. And it's the same for you. We can read about how people built their businesses, built their companies, but you have to do what works for you. And the only way you can figure that out is by becoming aware. And when you do that, you can stop procrastinating and you can start doing. And that's what all of that happens. Yes, Rob, it becomes a daily routine. Now, I've never done this before. I don't know if anybody has any questions. But if you have any questions about some of the stuff I just said here, or if you're like, all right, well, that makes sense, but how do you do it in this situation? Go ahead, fire them away. I'll try to answer as many as possible. But as we're doing that, I want you to think about your current situation. Pick one thing that frustrates you right now. And if it's, a lot of people, it's my schedule. Oh my gosh, I always feel like I'm doing a million different things. All right, well then, figure out what needs to happen in your schedule. Become aware of your roles and responsibility as an employee or as a husband, as a wife, as a partner, right? Become aware of your responsibilities. From there, prioritize, right? You get down to what needs to happen to be successful. A lot of times we hear people say the 80-20 rule, right? It's like, 80% of your success comes from 20% of the work you do. Well, as much as I read that statistic, as much as it's supposed to be ingrained in us, I don't believe it, because we live in a world now where through information and technology, you can concentrate on that 20%. You can create more effort and more consistency and more efficiency one day when you figure out what works. I love that, Rob. So if anybody see it, Rob says working 50, 60 hours a week, a full time, how hard is that? And I mind you that focus is the key. Let's see if we can get out of this. Focus is the key. So you can work nonstop 100 hours a week and stay up all night and try to make the life work for you, but a lot of times you get overwhelmed, and then you peter out, as they like to say, and then you're back to where it is again. Now, Shauna talks about prioritizing as a key. What are my top 3 areas to improve? I'm always going to say self-confidence, right? Because so many of us have been taught to compare. And the third, after self-confidence and prioritizing what works, I think the next step is to, I know it's going to be challenging, but work on your income, right? Get a clear idea of what is going on with your money, because the root of everything, right? If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We want to feel loved. We want to feel appreciated.